What's up, everyone? Chris Yandel here for Channelfireball.com, and welcome to another edition of Audio Articles, where we bring you articles written by the top Magic the Gathering pros in audio form, so you can listen on the go, wherever and whenever you want, for free, Monday through Friday. We've also got a lot of really great content on YouTube, so head on over to YouTube and search for Channel Fireball and ring the bell next to the subscribe button. If you want to make listening to the podcast even easier, ask Siri to play the most recent episode of Channel Fireball's podcast, and you're all set. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify. Today's episode is written by Mike Sigrist. Mike's going to talk about a deck that he took to a top 8 finish at Grand Prix Pittsburgh, but he hated every second. Thanks for being with us today, and here is I Hated the Deck I Played at Grand Prix Pittsburgh, and I Top 8'd with It, by Mike Sigrist. Usually when I top 8 a Grand Prix, I'm pretty excited. This time was a bit different. I didn't feel as enthusiastic about my finish because I didn't love my deck. Not how it played out, just how it functions. Here's what I played. Blue-white control. For lands, 7 island, 8 plains, 3 field of ruin, 4 glacial fortress, 4 irrigated farmland, and 1 memorial to genius. For spells, 1 Gideon of the Trials, 2 fumigate, 2 blink of an eye, 1 commit to memory, 4 disallow, 2 essence scatter, 1 negate, 2 pull from tomorrow, 3 settle the wreckage, 2 syncopate, 3 cast out, 4 seal away, 2 search for Iskanta, and 4 Teferi, hero of Dominaria. And in the sideboard, 1 fumigate, 3 negate, 2 sorcerer spyglass, 3 Lyra Dawnbringer, 1 Ixalan's binding, 1 forsake the worldly, 3 Baral, chief of compliance, and 1 ether meltdown. As you can tell, this is similar to the deck list that Leo Leonin played to a second place finish at GP Birmingham in the infancy of Dominaria Standard. His deck is designed to win by achieving complete control of the game by exhausting the opponent of resources, stranding them with dead cards, and using the ultimate of Teferi, hero of Dominaria somewhere in that mix. Then the deck can finish by Teferi endlessly tucking itself or getting a few hits in with Gideon of the Trials. I remember watching at the time and thinking, wow, this guy broke it. For Grand Prix Birmingham, the deck seemed legitimately broken to me. After a long and exhausting weekend at GP Vegas, I wasn't sure what to play in Standard. My instincts were to avoid playing a red deck because everyone was gunning for it, and at the Pro Tour it honestly didn't feel overwhelmingly good to me. Goblin Chainwhirler has warped the format in some ways, yes, but that damage has mostly been done. Adjustments have been made, and Goblin Chainwhirler doesn't get as much value as it used to. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great card, but it's just not what it was in Week 1. I really liked black-white vehicles leading up to the Pro Tour. It was a mid-range deck that could adjust to play an aggressive role or board into a more defensive strategy. Sam Pardee knew this and pointed me in the direction of a deck that won an open event played by Raja Sullivan. Here's Raja's deck list. Black-white vehicles. For lands, 2 Ifnir Deadlands, 4 Swamp, 6 Plains, 4 Ether Hub, 4 Concealed Courtyard, 1 Forsaken Sanctuary, and 4 Isolated Chapel. For creatures, 4 Knight of Malice, 1 Knight of Grace, 2 Lyra Dawnbringer, 2 Ravenous Chupacabra, 2 Angel of Sanctions, and 3 Glint Sleeve Siphoner. For spells, 3 Karn Scion of Urza, 4 History of Benalia, 2 Cast Down, 2 Ixalan's Binding, 3 Cast Out, 2 Gideon of the Trials, 4 Fatal Push, and 1 Ethersphere Harvester. And in the sideboard, 1 Profane Procession, 1 Argyl's Bloodfast, 2 Settle the Wreckage, 1 Sorcerer Spyglass, 1 Treasure Map, 1 Doomfall, 1 Liliana Death's Majesty, 1 Forsake the Worldly, 1 Lay Bare the Heart, 1 Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and 4 Duress. This deck looked great to me. It lost the vehicle package and had more mid-range elements that made it better against the red decks. Profane Procession was impressive against the red-black decks, which was a big draw to the color pair. I took the deck to battle in various iterations, including playing all 8 2-drop knights, and I quickly came to one conclusion. This deck that used to have an incredible control matchup felt like it was suddenly struggling. The adjustments made it better against red, yes, but at a cost of an aggressive game plan. History of Benalia is great against control, but it can't do the job on its own. You have to get underneath them with a card like Toolcraft Exemplar and punish their slow draws. At this point, I considered Mono Red. Mono Red had a solid matchup against Red Black, but felt weak to different versions of Black White and Control. Mono Red, to this point, has won a few major events and of course eventually ended up winning GP Pittsburgh as well. Having very little time, I didn't play a league with Mono Red and decided that I could likely play it from past experience. I left it as my fallback plan and considered other options. Blue-Black mid-range? Well, I really don't want to play a bunch of X1s when half of my opponents will have 4 Goblin Chainwhirler. I guess I'm off that. Then I thought about tuning red-black to be able to win mirrors. This entire time, however, in the back of my head, I was thinking about how well positioned control might be. This is like GP Birmingham all over again. The red decks are making adjustments to beat each other, and in turn, they lose a ton of points against control. Bomat Courier gives you so many points against control, and it's incredibly poor in mirrors. Cutting it is the first adjustment you'd likely make. Black-White Vehicles, a deck that once had a terrific control matchup, now transformed into a mid-range deck that I felt had an unfavorable one. All the trends for the tournament seem to indicate that I should play control. And while all this is going on, Matt Costa tweeted a deck list for blue-white control that he said that if he went to GP Pittsburgh, he would play. I immediately asked if I should play it, and he seemed confident that I should. Matt has a tendency to be pretty confident, and I know that he has a bias towards control, but I decided to try it in one league to see how it feels. I played one Magic Online league, went 5-0, and was actually able to finish my games in a reasonable time frame. I did play against Mono Red and Mono Green twice, 2 decks I board Lyra Dawnbringer in against, which helped me close games quickly. The deck felt great, so I decided that without any further testing, I was going to play it. One league, lock it in. I was worried about not having true win conditions, and discussed it briefly with Matt. The conclusion that we came to was that it just made your deck worse, and you can usually mitigate it by fast play. Gideon of the Trials is a pseudo-win condition and removal spell that can also prevent you from being burned out. In theory, Gideon seems solid as that 1-card slot. In reality, it was basically blank cardboard I would occasionally draw instead of a real card. Decks were either flooded with Planeswalker removal, like Vraska's Contempt or Cast Out, or were swarming you with creatures, which made it a mediocre life game spell. Its impact on games in general was just too small in my experience. There wasn't a single matchup that I was excited to draw the card. Throughout most of the tournament, I was enjoying myself. I had some long drawn-out matches on day 1, but all of them came to their natural conclusions. I was constantly picking up the pace of play from round to round to make sure that I could finish on time. Day 2 got off to a rocky start, as I played a one-game match against a former Team USA teammate, Joel Sadowski, on Esper Control. We played the game throughout a flashback memory, and I was able to deck him in the end by exhausting him of relevant win conditions. I wasn't looking forward to doing that again. I played one-game matches a total of 3 times on day 2, and after each one, I felt a little less happy with what my deck was doing. I never really liked how Teferi Hero of Dominaria could tuck itself and become its own win condition. After this tournament, I feel that you should just have to play a card like Approach to the Second Sun as a win condition so that games end naturally. Once you establish a Teferi lock in Game 1, your opponent is heavily incentivized to concede before you deck them so that they have time to finish the last 2 games of the match. This makes cards like Approach that are essentially 14 mana I win cards unnecessary, especially in Game 1. If it were up to me, I would errata Teferi to say Other Permanent so that the blue-white decks would be forced to play with a win condition. As a professional player, I'm going to do what I feel gives me the best chance of winning. But as a fan of the game, I don't like what playing one-game matches does to tournament magic. It reminds me a lot of Grand Prix Miami a few years back when Green-White Devotion was a deck, and players gained hundreds of life with Mastery of the Unseen, and it was extremely difficult to finish a game of the mirror. Playing control mirrors with pure blue-white control felt just like that. If a game went beyond 10 turns, it was going to go 50 turns. Despite how fun it may be to play if you like that sort of thing, it holds up the tournament and creates an unpleasant viewing experience for spectators. So when I say that I didn't love my deck, it wasn't because of how it felt or how it performed. In fact, it felt like the best deck I've played in a tournament in a long, long time. Once the deck stabilized, it almost always shut the door. With Nationals coming up, a tournament that I haven't decided if I'm going to attend or not, if I were to play this deck, I'd definitely squeeze in a win condition. It's physically taxing to play such long matches with the speed you need to deck your opponent. Approach of the Second Sun looks like the best option, and I'd definitely cut Gideon of the Trials for 1 copy, and perhaps the Commit to Memory for the second. This does completely change the dynamic of the deck, and cards like Pull from Tomorrow become less relevant because you don't need to bury them in card advantage if you have an I win card like Approach of the Second Sun. So I'd probably play Glimmer of Genius main deck instead, and probably sideboard Torrential Gearhulk as a win condition that works around Negate and Duress. What I'm describing is almost exactly Brad Nelson's deck from Pro Tour Dominaria, and if you want to see a full list of Brad's deck, head on over to Channelfireball and click on this article. I'd probably opt for more Lyra Dawnbringer in the sideboard, and fewer copies of other win conditions, but having access to Torrential Gearhulk, Lyra, and the potential history of Benalia in the sideboard as well would make matches end much more quickly. This is the direction I'd go this weekend if I were to play this deck again, but only because I don't want to fight the clock. I think that having no win conditions would be correct if the clock were not a factor, and I think the design of Teferi Hero of Dominaria leads to that, unfortunately. Sideboard guide. Here's the sideboard plan that Matt Costa worked on. I used it with only minor tweaks for Grand Prix Pittsburgh. Red-black aggro mid-range. We're going to take out 1 commit to memory, 1 Gideon of the Trials, 1 pull from tomorrow, 2 blink of an eye, 1 syncopate, and 1 settle the wreckage. And we're going to put in 1 Ether Meltdown, 1 Forsake the Worldly, 1 Ixalan's Binding, 2 Sorcerer's Spyglass, and 2 Negate. Mono red. We're going to take out 1 Disallow, 1 Commit to Memory, 1 Gideon of the Trials, 2 Pull from Tomorrow, 2 Search for Escanta, and 1 Syncopate. And we're going to put in 3 Baral, Chief of Compliance, 3 Lyra Dawnbringer, 1 Negate, and 1 Ixalan's Binding. If you see Scrap Heap Scrounger, you can bring in Ether Meltdown as well. I saw Sorcerer's Spyglass from an opponent at the Grand Prix and shaved the Teferi Hero of Dominaria for a Search for Escanta so that my card engines didn't all get shut off by 1 card. Blue-black midrange. We're going to take out 1 Seal Away, 2 Settle the Wreckage, 1 Fumigate, and 1 Gideon of the Trials, and we're going to put in 2 Sorcerer's Spyglass, 1 Forsake the Worldly, and 2 Negates. Esper Control. We're going to take out 3 Settle the Wreckage, 1 Fumigate, 2 Seal Away, 1 Gideon of the Trials, and 1 Syncopate, and we're going to put in 3 Baral, Chief of Compliance, 1 Forsake the Worldly, 1 Ixalan's Binding, and 3 Negate. On the draw, I'd consider leaving in the 3rd Seal Away and trimming another Syncopate. Blue-white. We're going to take out 4 Seal Away, 2 Settle the Wreckage, and 2 Essence Scatter, and we're going to put in 1 Forsake the Worldly, 1 Ixalan's Binding, 3 Baral, Chief of Compliance, and 3 Negate. Green-black Constrictor. We're going to take out 1 Gideon of the Trials, 1 Settle the Wreckage, and 2 Syncopate, and we're going to put in 1 Fumigate, 1 Sorcerer's Spyglass, 1 Forsake the Worldly, and 1 Negate. Mono green Galta. We're going to take out 1 Pull from Tomorrow, 1 Search for Escanta, 1 Gideon of the Trials, 1 Settle the Wreckage, 1 Negate, and 1 Syncopate, and we're going to put in 3 Lyra Dawnbringer, 1 Fumigate, 1 Ixalan's Binding, and 1 Forsake the Worldly. White-black midrange. We're going to take out 4 Seal Away, 1 Gideon of the Trials, and 2 Essence Scatter, and we're going to put in 1 Forsake the Worldly, 1 Fumigate, 1 Sorcerer's Spyglass, 1 Ixalan's Binding, and 3 Negate. If you see Glintsleeve Siphoner, keep in 2 Seal Away and cut Commit to Memory and a Settle the Wreckage. Blue-white Gift. We're going to take out 4 Seal Away, 1 Fumigate, 1 Gideon of the Trials, and 1 Syncopate, and we're going to put in 1 Ixalan's Binding, 2 Baral, Chief of Compliance, 3 Negate, and 1 Forsake the Worldly. While I made the top 8 of GP Pittsburgh, I still don't like how my deck functioned. As a professional player, I'm looking to win with the cards that they give me, but no win condition control is pushing the boundaries. I had a lot of positive feedback about the sweet one-game control mirrors from lovers of control, but for others, I understand why they'd get bored watching a game for an hour with no result. If this is your thing, I do legitimately think that the deck is great. And if you can figure out a great plan against blue-black mid-range for post-ported games, I feel pretty good about all the matchups. I don't know if I'll go to Nationals, and if I do, I don't know if I'd play this deck. If I do, one thing's certain, I'll play more win conditions. That does it for this episode of Audio Articles. Make sure to head over to channelfireball.com and leave Mike a comment about what you thought about today's article, or you can hit him up on Twitter at msigrist83. Also, make sure to check out cfbevents.com. You'll find all the information about the upcoming GPs there. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for being with us today, and I hope to see you soon. And until then, peace.